Greetings, fanboys. Welcome to our very, very, very special 100th video.
Yes, this is our first very special episode, just like the old sitcoms. In fact, our most special episode to date.
But don't worry, there's not going to be any creepy old guy that works at a bicycle shop. It's not that kind of special episode.
There's not going to be any eating disorder that Uncle Jesse has to talk to us about.
And there's certainly not going to be some weird old Greek grandfather that dies that Uncle Jesse also has to talk about. If you got any of those references, good for you.
God bless you.
You truly have no life, but thank you.
We really appreciate it. But we're not here to talk about old sitcoms. We're here to talk about Fanboys Forever, and mostly that means toys.
You may have noticed this episode is called Secret Origin. Every fanboy has a story. And even though some of us don't take the time to go through and say, okay, where did this start? What are the influences? Why did I get into this? Why did I become, so obsessed? Really, there is an explanation. And so we're here to sort of delve into our secret past.
And give you a look at some of our actual childhood possessions, some of the very beginnings of our toy collecting habits.
Now, a lot of these toys are going to display a lot of wear, and they may not be 100% perfect or complete or anything, but these are the toys that we wouldn't give away no matter what.
Not in a million
These
years.
are the ones that absolutely formed who we are. These are the special items in our collection. And each one has a story.
Absolutely.
All right, so without further ado, I guess I'll head things off since I am older than Brandon.
That's right.
Slightly.
He's going to predate me by a little bit.
But some of my very first exposure getting into toys, I remember, was it was really the Marvel superheroes line from Toy Biz. So it was early 90s. I was born in 87, so it was about 1990 or 91. I remember getting really interested in the Marvel superheroes. At the time, Sci-Fi was actually doing reruns for the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man show.
I remember that fondly.
And, the Incredible Hulk was on too. So that informed everything I knew about these characters. And at that time, it's really, really hard. If you're a young person watching this video, you will probably never understand what it was like to grow up. And please comment if you know what I'm talking about. I know a lot of you guys do.
Yeah.
To grow up in 90 to like 93, there was no Spider-Man stuff.
Anything
None.
prior to the Fox Kids animated series, it was a dead zone.
Yeah. I mean, I remember every Spider-Man shirt I ever found I bought because there were no Spider-Man shirts, which, that's insane to think of these days. But I remember like buying coloring books and just anything I could that had Spider-Man on it. I would get excited. Old like penny banks and stuff, just anything I could find. One of the things that I did was I immediately got interested in photographing my figures, which kind of led, to these video reviews.
Yeah.
I wanted to take pictures of things. I filmed some of my action figures. I made action figure videos. I made action figure movies. I made little stories for them. And here we have a photo. I'll bring it a little bit closer here. And as we can see, this was the old Jurassic Park playset, the compound that Kenner did. And you can see I have Spider-Man over here, Captain America, and the Hulk. And I had it where they were teaming up. I can't remember who they were fighting or anything like that. But
dinosaurs, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully it was the T-Rex. But I remember Mom let me use the camera to take this, and she sent it off and got it developed. That's one thing I can say is my parents were always really supportive of this stuff. And as a matter of fact, to end with this, I'd like to show you guys that I actually, all three of the figures in that photo, these aren't different. Here they are. Over 20 years later, these action figures still in, pretty good shape. I got Captain America here. Just a few little minor scuffs and scratches. Spider-Man, he has what I refer to as dental floss webbing. And it's still in there, And the Incredible Hulk, who has the funny little action feature. I have his boulder that he came with as well, but I just didn't grab it for this video. These guys are still really, really special to me. They hold a special place in my heart for getting me interested in action figures in the first place.
And I think it's terrific, that, and you'll hear this same sort of thing from people who, grew up in the 60s, even going way back when, or people who grew up in the 70s who are playing with, like, Migos. That who would have ever thought, like, there you have Spider-Man and Captain America, and, we just saw these brand new, gigantic Captain America and Spider-Man movies earlier this year, even if one of those wasn't very good at all, and you all know which one.
Yeah, you know which one. Spider-Man 2. It's not the good Spider-Man 2.
No. It's great to see those things carry over, oftentimes I'll hear older fans older than us say, I wouldn't have believed, 40 years ago or 50 years ago that there'd ever be a Spider-Man movie, let alone so many of them. Well, we're not quite in that perspective, but I would have never imagined one 20 years ago. So even if it's been 12 years since the first live action Spider-Man film did come out, so it's really great to see the progression of things like that. Of course, I was like I think pretty much everybody, and certainly any kid that grew up in our generation and our age range. I was a gigantic Batman fan of both the live action films, the Tim Burton films around that time, and then the animated series a little later on. But of anything, a lot like Jared's Spider-Man recollection, anything Batman oriented, I was on top of. So I didn't bring them. I wish I had actually thought about it, but I've still got like my Batman comb and hairbrush from when I was a kid, and washcloth, that kind of anything I could possibly get my hands on, I was all over. But of course, my Batman toys were some of my very favorite toys when I was a kid. Jared has already talked about the Marvel Superheroes Toy Biz figures. Well, Toy Biz, of course, also did the DC Superheroes line, which was mostly repaints and resculpts of superpower stuff that Kenner had done in the 80s. Toy Biz had the license for just a brief period of time, and that includes doing the movie one, the Batman '89 figures, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But two of the earliest action figures I ever had were the Toy Biz DC Superheroes Riddler and Penguin here, and I got these as birthday gifts. I don't remember it, to a T. I'm thinking it was probably my fourth birthday. Third, it had to be third or fourth. I just, it's one of those things you just sort of have fractured memories of, just little like fragments and images you have. But I remember getting them vaguely. But I absolutely just played these guys to death. You can sort of see the Riddler's big chest question mark is sort of worn off, and the Penguin has got a big splotch on his the front of his chest here. This is a funny story. A lot of this white on the tuxedo chipped off, and I was probably 7-8 years old, and I was still playing with these things because they were better than at the time I thought they were better than a lot of the newer figures around. And this was probably the first example of me trying to fix or repair or customize, I guess, an action figure, because a lot of the Penguin's tuxedo had chipped off his tuxedo vest, and I tried to repair it, and I didn't know anything about painting at the time, and so I thought, whiteout would work just fine because it's white, and obviously whiteout fades pretty much immediately after it dries because it's not supposed to be permanent. So there's this big splotch of whiteout, and I guess it looks better than if it was just blue exposed, but not too much. But I absolutely love these guys, and they'll be around forever. These are the same two. These aren't replacements. I actually do have another complete Penguin that I got a few years ago to go in my collection too. But those are the real deal. And of course, all of us couldn't get enough of the Dark Knight collection, and so these were really my go-to Batman and Joker figures when I was a kid. Again, these are the same two that I had. Here's the dress-up Bruce Wayne who came with the Batman armor. Armor is long gone. I think I've got the chest plate in a box somewhere, but I know like the gloves and the boots have been missing forever. The Joker, the tails of his coat have been ripped off, so that's kind of funny. But these were absolutely the definitive Batman and Joker figures for me when I was a kid. Until I got the animated series figures a little bit later on. But these. To put it in context, my Batman play for years, toy-wise, were these four figures, and then I never had a current Batmobile when I was a kid. The Batmobile that I played with was my older brother. He's about 8 years older than I am, and he had the Superpowers Batmobile when he was a kid. I think that's a big part of my collecting, is that my brother was such a big toy fan, and it kind of carried over. And a lot of the toys, in this video, I'm specifically showing off toys that I had, that I got myself, or that I got as gifts for myself when I was a kid. But a lot of the toys that I played with were hand-me-downs. So I had a good early exposure to a lot of things that kids my age weren't getting because of my older brother. So I was playing with vintage G.I. Joe and vintage Masters and G1 Transformers and stuff. Vintage Star Wars, especially, which is Jared's got an example of that we're going to segue into in a little bit. So there was my mishmash, my Toy Biz, Riddler and Penguin, and my Kenner, Bruce Wayne and Joker, and my Superpowers Batmobile. But that's when you didn't have the immediate availability of anything you wanted back then, you had to sort of create your own world in your toys, which is something we've certainly gotten away from. And I like to see kids sort of throw toys together that don't necessarily belong with each other, sort of create their own world for their toys. I think that's one of the strengths of like Toy Story, the films. You have this completely self-created world of toys, which is something I think we really lose as adults.
One of the most important properties for me as a kid was Batman, by far. I definitely started out as a big Spider-Man fan when I was a kid. But Batman was something that was just kind of always there for me. I was born into the era, and you were too, where Batman 1 had totally popularized, Batman 89 had totally popularized Batman for the masses. So it wasn't difficult at all to find Batman stuff around. That's why I kind of struggled so much to find Spider-Man stuff. Batman was kind of the thing.
Yeah.
It was all over the merchandise. He had all the promotions and everything.
Batman tortilla chips.
Yeah, Batman.
I remember eating many a bag of Batman tortilla chips.
Batman cologne.
Yeah.
But there were some special figures that I have from my collection, and like all these today, these are originals that I had that I played with as a kid. When I was a kid, I believe I was around 4 years old, and it was circa 1990, probably 91. These were still on the shelf before the Batman Returns stuff came out. And the first one I'll talk about is just basic Batman himself. Here we go. There's a few different versions of basic Batman out there, but I think there ended up being a total of 3 different versions of this figure. But this is the one with the comic book styling head. I have the one with the Michael Keaton style head. There was another one, I believe, that has a very squared off jaw. I don't believe I ever got that one. But this is a really interesting one, particularly because they tried a pretty cool action feature that's pretty true to the movie, and something that I could not get enough of as a kid. All you got to do, pull out the belt, and it still works. And then it goes straight up, and it's still in good shape. Still goes great. I haven't had to replace the string or anything. The paint's just slightly scuffed around the bat symbol. Great figure. Something I'll never forget.
So simple pleasures that really made toys great. Something as silly as a belt shooting off and retracting was just incredible.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
I actually have a great story for this figure. I got kind of sick when I was a kid one time, and I sort of got misdiagnosed. They thought I was dehydrated, and I went to my regular doctor later, and I wasn't dehydrated. But when they did, as a precaution, they sent me to the hospital, and so I just stayed at night, and they gave me some fluids. And while I was in there, Mom and Dad bought me the Toy Biz Batmobile, the one that's the convertible, pretty much, with the open top. And they also got me that figure, the Batman from Toy Biz. So I got both of those, and I was really, really pleased. And on the way home from the hospital, I remember passing by a local gas station, Town and Country, for all you people who live here in Jackson. But I was taking Batman, and I had him out the window. I had the window rolled down, and I was flying him out the window, like, oh, this is awesome. Batman's, flying through the air. This is great. And I didn't have real good grip on him, and he flew out of my hand. And so we actually had to pull over at Town and Country down there at the gas station and search for Batman. And we found him in the parking lot. He was still there. So my toys have survived a lot.
Yeah.
But that's a really great memory I have, and I know Mom still remembers that really well, like it was yesterday. But that's the fun of summer 91, people. Summer 90, 91, whatever that was.
Being sick was totally worth it.
Oh, yeah. Here we have the Joker from the same series. He was a very big deal to me as well. Hat's totally removable. As you can see, there is no discernible likeness to Jack Nicholson. I'm sure that they did not pay for any kind of Jack Nicholson likeness.
I guarantee not.
Looks nothing like him. The mouth is supposed to be painted, but it's left totally white because Toy Biz was pretty cheap compared to Kenner. So instead, it just looks like he's got this impossibly big grin, and there's no mouth, but really it's supposed to be painted in there. His gimmick was that he could shoot water from the flower on the front. I don't have the cord attached or anything like that, but he had a really, really bad habit of falling apart. This sample, actually, I believe I had ended up maybe gluing this back together so that it would hold. But yeah, Joker's been through a lot as well. Finally, about summer '92, I remember my brother and me, we were watching television, and the commercials came on for the new segment for the Dark Knight collection. because, later on Kenner got the license. They made far superior Batman figures. In 91, they started. Summer 92, we saw the commercial for the Batman Returns segment of the Dark Knight collection. And that's really what it is. It's just it's the same type of packaging. It's just Batman Returns symbols. And I remember it was a wave of confusion fell over me because Robin was in the commercial. Little did I know that was Marlon Wayans' Robin that they did a sculpt of, but they painted him white.
Only a decade later would we ever find out what the real deal with that was.
And I saw this commercial and it just looked so incredible. It was later on for our birthdays that we got the Bat Missile Batmobile, as well as the Batcave compound, Wayne Manor compound, whatever you want to call it, and I'll show that here in a second. But I remember Dad, he went right after work and he got us like a full range of the toys. We got Penguin, Robin, Catwoman, and a Batman of some sort. It was it might have been the Batman whose wings pop up. You press the thing in his back and his arms flap. And I've got that around, but I just didn't bring it out for this video. Got all those guys.
Yeah.
And I remember
I think
as soon as my brother got it, he got the Catwoman figure. And she had a rubber whip. And her action feature was you would take the arm and she would whip down. And I can't remember if I did it or he did it, but he accidentally whipped himself really, really hard in the face and started crying. Mm-hmm. So there you go, Josh. That's my story on you. So that's that.
I don't want to step on your toes, but I think when you brought that up, it makes me think. I think Dark Knight Collection is probably the most comprehensive. Like I think it was the toy line that I was the closest to having pretty practically all of, at least the figures. I had a couple of the small vehicles. I never had the big ones in the playset, but I mean, I really had, almost every Batman. I had Catwoman, Penguin. I think the ones that I was most fascinated by were the Penguins, Assault Penguins, the real Penguin.
I have a funny story about that. There's a Kmart that may have, I think, went out of business pretty soon after this. But there was a Kmart that I went to, and for all you folks in Middlesboro, it was the Kmart that you guys had in the mall. If anybody from Middlesboro is watching this, it's Rose's now. But I went in there, and this was probably 2001 or so. And in the action figure aisle, I swear, there it was, a 2-pack from Batman Returns of the Penguins.
That's insane.
From Batman Returns, they were there, and I'll never forget how strange that was. But getting back on track to the Batman Returns figures, this was my favorite Batman figure from that line. This is the Scuba Batman.
I remember this one fondly.
And as you can see, he comes with a little buoy, which was an incredible deal because it was like $5 for this figure, and you got a vehicle that actually floats and worked really well in water. How do I know this? This thing stayed in the bathtub pretty much with me. It still does today. But he's totally removable. He had a missile that could shoot from the front here. That's probably around somewhere. Once you get Batman off, he's got this incredible little rig that's really well sculpted that he wears on the front. This clips right off. And underneath is this really, really nice Batman variant. Really cool. He's got bat symbols on the shoulders and some arrows and some stripes. Looks like a Roger Moore James Bond costume he would have.
Completely stealthy. He's really going to blend into the night with that suit on.
But it's just, I love this figure. It was so great. My brother, he got the silver, like quilted looking armor Batman figure from the Batman Returns line, and that was the two we got. But this was an incredible figure, still one of my very, very favorites, and holds a really special place in my heart.
I know the case for a lot of people is there is occasionally a toy line that's not the biggest and not the most successful, and maybe one that you never had an experience with anybody else with. So nothing like a Batman or a Transformers or whatever it is. Something that just lasted for a brief time. And one of those for me, one of like my fondest toy memories, was the Kenner Swamp Thing line. Absolutely loved Swamp Thing when I was a kid. Loved the cartoon. The cartoon's one of those funny examples. It seemed to me at the time, in the early 90s, like that cartoon was like a big cartoon. It seemed like it was, like G.I. Joe or anything else. And when I was grown, I was like, it's 5 episodes.
It's only 5 episodes.
How could it have seemed like such a big deal?
In my head, it was like a 30 episode series.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a full season of shows. But I love the live action show on USA, and I like the first live action film. It's funny, I never really saw Return of Swamp Thing until like later on, but I remember watching the first one on TV.
The interesting thing about these figures is when Kenner first did them, they were sort of a Return of Swamp Thing tie-in.
They really were, yeah. And the mold for this Swamp Thing, in fact, is really similar to the design for the movie. But this is the Kenner Swamp Thing line. Great little line. Kind of a follow-up to Superpowers.
If anything this was the follow-up.
Really featured some similar qualities. And in fact, for a long time, one of the Swamp Things was rumored to have been an unused prototype from Superpowers that was going to be in the lost fourth wave. Of course, that turned out that rumor turned out not to hold water, but I definitely see why. And several of these figures fit very well into it. But Swamp Thing fit the bill as a classic toy line. Actually, really similar to the Dark Knight collection, like we've talked about already. You had a bunch of Swamp Thing variants. You had a couple of allies and several villains, and then your vehicles and playsets and stuff. I had several of the figures, never had any of the vehicles or playsets or anything at the time. I got all of them now that I'm grinding. Actually, we both do. I practically have every figure, and in fact, I have almost all of them carded. I have all but 2 carded on my wall right now. So that kind of shows the impact the line had on me. But these were real. I mean, not only do I love the toys, I think they were great toys that I just absolutely, played to death. It's one of those, when you have a special story about something, is really like Jared's hospital stories about the Batman 1 toys. I remember distinctly for several days in a row, I still don't know where they came from, where she got them. I grew up in Perry County, Kentucky. That's Hazard. I live just outside of Hazard. I went to Chavvy's Elementary, and when I was in kindergarten, at the time, kindergarten was a half-day class. You went to school until like noon, or you ate lunch at school and then you came home.
See, my kindergarten was actually all day.
Really?
Yeah, and that's.
I got lucky.
Yeah, you got lucky because they had just started. Like 3 years before that, making it all day.
Oh man!
And, previously.
See, I guess they're all day now.
They're all day, yeah. As far as I know.
So for a long time, I rode the bus home, and that was a bummer because I would get home at like 4:30 in the afternoon after school. Let it at like 3 because I was the last stop. So my mom started coming and getting me every day after school, which wasn't like the biggest deal because we just lived like 15 minutes away, which made it even more ridiculous that I was getting home so late. Anyway, I was miserable. I didn't like being away from home anyway. I distinctly remember. It's not that I hated being at school so much. I just couldn't stand being away from home. But I mean, when you're a kid, you get so attached. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So my mom started coming and picking me up after school every day. And around that time, for 4 days in a row, she would bring me a new Swamp Thing figure every day. And these were 2 of them. These are 2 of the same ones that I had when I was a kid. And again, I don't know where they came from. Don't know. I bet they probably came from, this is Hazard, circa 1992, 1993. So I'm sure they came from either Rose's or Magic Mart there, which Magic Mart is actually still open in Hazard, which is a miracle, a small miracle if there ever was one.
Just wait till you get all those angry comments in the video. Yeah, we're open. This is the owner, pal. We're going strong.
If this is the owner of Magic Mart, please drop me a line. I really appreciate it, as I go there every time I visit the old home digs. So Swamp Thing, just a little line that could. I think one of the most underrated action figure lines ever from that time period, in the true Kenner style, like the absolute definitive type of Kenner toy line. Swamp Thing is just tops, and great toys with a great story to go with them. So I absolutely love these guys, and these have consistently been on my shelves, like displayed really prominently. This is. For the record, this is BioGlow Swamp Thing. The awesome Swamp Thing with 2 features. He has a punching action, just like old Superpowers figures.
Kind of looks like he's doing the shuffle.
Yeah, sort of. He's doing it, folks.
I think he's doing the hustle.
He's doing it. And he glows in the dark. He glows in the dark well, too. And this is Dr. Demo, who is... I'm going to call back to Roger Moore, James Bond here, after Jared mentioned him earlier. Suspiciously similar to Baron Samedi.
And Freddy Krueger as well.
Yeah, very Freddy Krueger-y. But those are my vintage Swamp Thing figures that I absolutely love.
One modern toy line that we're really, really heavily into. I'm not a completist. I can't afford to be a completist.
Yeah. Who can afford to be a completist for anything now, honestly?
But it's the Masters of the Universe Classics.
Absolutely.
And, I would say 70% of the people that collect toys collect Masters of the Universe Classics.
I certainly hope so. If they're not, they should be.
There's plenty of folks that collect action figures that collect Masters Classics. But for me, I didn't get into He-Man until probably a couple years before Masters Classics started up, and I tried to go back and get some of the 2000X figures. But everything like that has kind of a deep root somewhere. It's got a seed. It's planted early on. And for me, that was my older sister. She's about 12 or 13 years older than me. And my sister, when she was younger, back then, and this was probably Christmas 1983, I would say, 1982. 82 or 83, it's got to be. Back then, corporations, companies, Christmas time, and comment if you remember this, if you're, one of those people that received one of these presents, that they would buy every employee's kid, a present. They would have a deal with Mattel or, with Hasbro or something. And my dad worked for Flaybridge Dairy Company, and he still does. They changed their name and all that, but Dad's been working there, 30-some years. And they had a deal with Mattel, and the deal was this, that for your kid, you could either say you wanted to get them the Barbie doll that was that season, 83's Barbie doll or whatever, or you could get a Battle Armor He-Man, which is what they were really trying to, promote at that time. And Michelle told me specifically, my sister, she said, I did not want the Barbie doll. It was so boring. She had $1 million. But what she did want was Battle Armor He-Man. That was, what she thought was cool was Battle Armor He-Man. And God bless her. Clearly, He-Man was in my DNA, well ahead of time. But she got this. And it was always a part of my toy collection as a kid. Mom naturally put it right in with her action figures. When we were a kid, she still had this, in storage when we came around. And I was always so fascinated by this thing. It's got one of the greatest action features, and miraculously it did work this time, because this thing is wearing out. It's got one of the greatest action features of all time in any toy. You just, here's his chest plate, click it once, and he's got 1 mark of battle damage, click it again, he's got 2 marks of battle damage. Pretty amazing stuff. Still in really, really good shape, I think, if I do say so myself. I haven't had to replace his rubber bands or anything to keep his legs in. Mostly He-Man was an enigma to me as a kid. I knew He-Man had been a big deal at some point, and I heard people talk about He-Man being a big deal. But honestly, I didn't. I just didn't know anything about He-Man.
It's funny, when we were kids, the show was never in reruns.
No.
Like through the early 90s.
Yeah, it was nowhere.
And to this, it's only been rerun on TV in just like the last 5 years on like weird cable channels and stuff.
People don't understand that it didn't really have a presence. There was no reruns of the old Filmation cartoon. And I remember.
And for the record, when we were kids, for whatever reason, if it was just in this part of the country or our particular local television channels, we did not have any exposure to New Adventures of He-Man, and we were certainly at the right age.
Most people didn't. I see a lot of threads on He-Man.org. There's still people on He-Man.org, that start some threads, which, surely I do not support He-Man.org. It's run by some pretty
questionable
people.
Yeah.
No, thank you. But there's threads where people are like, do you remember seeing New Adventures of He-Man? Because nobody can remember it. Even people that were a kid at that time don't remember seeing it, so no wonder we didn't.
Yeah.
So He-Man was truly a mystery to me, and it wasn't until years later that I got into it and I figured out what made this figure so appealing to me. For one thing, I just remember as a kid, and I still get the sensation today, it's almost made for your hand to hold it. It's got, the very small waist, and it's almost, like an X. It bows out, both ways. Makes it a really satisfying action figure to hold in your hand with kind of the staunch kind of look, the kind of hunched over, battle ready pose. Great figure.
And really, it sure brings up a good point about He-Man. And we're not from the He-Man generation, us really. Unlike a lot of guys who do this sort of thing, like Pixel Dan. We're younger than a lot of those guys by a pretty 8-10 year margin. So we weren't, like we said, we weren't there for He-Man. It was only because of my older brother that I ever knew anything about He-Man when I was little. He-Man is still when you think of the word action figure in your mind, the first thing I think of is He-Man. It doesn't matter G.I. Joe or Star Wars or whatever, which I love. the immediate mental response is He-Man. Like you see vintage He-Man there. So that's the power, of that kind of toy.
If you guys look closely, I've been sitting over here kind of like playing.
Yeah, you can't help it.
Because I kind of
You're absolutely drawn to those
and
figures.
to its credit, I've not been doing that with the other figures we've had out. So, very cool figure, and like all these toys, a great story.
Absolutely. Of course, for us, the two of us, and everybody in our age group, the phenomenon, the full tilt phenomenon, what we were born into, like we were talking about He-Man just a minute ago, for the people a little older than us, our phenomenon was definitely Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
We were the perfect age.
Yeah.
When it was in full swing,
Yeah.
is when we were the perfect
We were right
age
there.
to receive it.
We were right there for the absolute, for the burnout period, when it got as big as it was ever going to get, was us. So Ninja Turtles, huge. Ninja Turtles could not do wrong. Came home, watched it every single day on USA Cartoon Express. Never missed an opportunity to get Ninja Turtles, whatever. Chef Boyardee, Kleenexes, just bubble bath, whatever,
We have a lot of crazy stories about our Turtles merchandise, and for this one, I was thinking we could actually do it together.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Because it's kind of a shared experience.
I mean, we want to show some symmetry between the two of us, because it's kind of, when we're sort of leading up to
honestly, probably my Turtles experience probably came, this is a strange item, but it probably came, since I'm a little bit older than Brandon, probably a little bit before his first one. This is my first Turtles toy I ever owned, and I still have it. This is a sucker topper, as far as I remember. Is that correct? It's a sucker
I think
topper.
that... I don't remember those,
Yep, there's,
actually.
there's where it went in down here. And this has a really, really interesting origin. This was some of the very earliest kind of licensed merchandise that they did for Turtles when it was getting big. As you can see, the design doesn't really reflect the cartoon or anything. It more reflects the comic book. It's a little sculpture of Leonardo, and it topped a sucker. And I got it at this old steakhouse that we used to go to when I was a kid in Corbin, Kentucky. And it was, if I remember at the time, it was called Western Sizzling. And you guys know what I'm talking about if anybody's Corbin, London area. Now it's called David's, I believe.
Yeah,
That's
David's Steakhouse and Buffet.
But at the time it was Western Sizzling. This was at the counter, unlike some of the stuff like the vendors would leave for people to buy, as they checked out. So Mom let us get one. I believe that we also got Donatello or Raphael. I can't remember which one, but it's back there. I used to bring it out with me. But this is the first Turtles figure I ever got. I was fascinated by it. Even a non-painted little miniature was just, I knew instantly that there was something about this.
Yeah.
This was probably 1990 or 91, I would say.
It's a very early memory.
Yeah, very early.
I don't know. Yeah, it's Turtles. Ninja Turtles is one of those things. It just absolutely, there are cases, and a lot of brands get accused of this. When there's a big difference between being a fad and being a phenomenon, and a lot of things get accused of being fads. Kids get interested in them because everybody else is interested in them. And I think that in the case of something like Turtles, to begin with, I think it speaks volumes that it's still around and is going right now as strong as it ever has. Maybe not as strong as
the prime.
The absolute peak.
It probably won't be back to that.
No, but that's I don't think anything ever gets to that sort of pinnacle today.
Not the fever pitch, like Power Rangers fever pitch and all that, which we'll go into.
Yeah, but something about Turtles just reaches kids at a fundamental level. There's something about, it just speaks to us, really hooks onto you at an early age. And as has certainly stuck with us, as you probably watched some of our recent videos, the last thing we did was Ninja Turtles reviews. So tons of, like I was saying, anything with the brand on it was, solid gold when you were a kid. It didn't matter, brushing your teeth was better because you had the Ninja Turtles toothbrush, and taking a bath was better because you had the Ninja Turtles bubble bath, whatever it was. But the action figures, of course, were the cream of the crop. And there were so many, absurd variations of Ninja Turtles, of course. And one of them that I really... it's borderline offensive now, so that's one of the reasons that I like it. Here, from the Wacky West Ninja Turtles line, Bandito Michelangelo, and this calls back to something I was talking about earlier. I got this on the same birthday when I got my Toy Biz Penguin and Riddler figures, And I wish I had it. I wish I could have thought about getting it the last time I visited, but we've only been planning this video for a couple of weeks now. My grandmother still has a picture of me at that birthday party, and you can see me, and I'm sitting on the couch, little Brandon, and you can see this figure carded sitting right next to me. So there's my photo evidence.
Proof.
But it's one of the, I just love Ninja Turtles, so it was the obvious.
I like turtles.
It was the obvious gift idea for my parents, or I don't even know who bought it for me, to tell you the truth. It could have been my grandmother. Could have been anybody. I would have never asked specifically for, hey, I want Bandito, Michelangelo. But it's one of those things that you get, and you just, you go crazy for. And part of that is just your, undying love for the brand. This was a figure that got a lot of play, for me as a kid. This was, for a brief time, this was the Michelangelo, in my Turtles play dynamic with my other Ninja Turtles action figures.
This is the Michelangelo that gets arrested for a hate crime.
Yeah, or he gets picked up at the border. I don't know.
It could be either one.
Yeah.
Was this one of the first Turtles figures you ever got, or is it just one of your favorites?
This was one of my favorites. It was one of the very first ones that I got for myself. A lot of the Turtles figures, again, like I was talking about earlier, were figures that, because, the toys have been coming out since '88, and I was born in '88, a lot of the figures that I played with were ones that my older brother and sister had gotten. So they were always around. But this is one of the earliest ones that I distinctly remember was specifically purchased for me. And, of course, I have the birthday story to go with it, so I thought it was a really good example.
For me, I have one similar to Brandon that's one of my favorites. But before I get into that, this is actually the first Turtles figure I ever got. It's Metalhead. There's a new version of this that's actually very similar. He does not have the cool vac metal on him, though, which is actually miraculously held up really well. It's hardly chipped at all. But Metalhead was the robotic Ninja Turtle that Donatello builds. And he's, a really cool character. I love the figure. It's still a great design and it holds up really well. Very first one we ever got. I still remember this figure has a really, really funny story. And it's me and my brother. We, TV commercials were everything to us as kids. That and the JCPenney Christmas catalog. And you all know what I'm talking about. If you're now, it doesn't mean anything.
No. Very fondly remember.
Those two things are the things that would really advertise toys to me. And I remember we saw a Turtles commercial on TV. I couldn't have been more than 4 years old. My brother asks Mom, says, go out, today, sometime if you could get us some Ninja Turtles, when you go out, to the grocery shop or whatever. So we were at home, we were waiting for it to come back, the Ninja Turtles. And this is, right at the time when the brand is, on fire. So you can't hardly find Ninja Turtles action figures. They're not really around, especially the basic ones were selling, really well. Josh wanted Michelangelo. And all Mom heard, these were turtles dressed as ninjas, her. So, she didn't know about the Ninja Turtles or anything. Now she can pick them out like nobody's business, but, for my nephew. But she came up with this, and, I think Josh knew it wasn't like a regular Ninja Turtle, but we still loved it.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? We told her immediately, no, you don't have to return it or anything like that. We like this one. This is great. And Metalhead become a staple of my action figure collection. He's in miraculously good shape for how old he is and how much play he received. But honestly, you were probably like this too as a kid. I was pretty responsible about how I played with my figures.
Yes.
I didn't do
especially Ninja Turtles. And accessories is one thing, but none of my figures are broken. I never played rough with figures intentionally.
You're right.
Metalhead is actually one of my big favorites from when I was little too. I still have my old one that was my older brother's before I got it. And I distinctly remember loving his backpack, and especially the little sticker on it, which I still have the backpack and the belt on mine. Metalhead is one of those sort of all-purpose type figures. I'd seen the episode of the cartoon when I was little, but like I was discussing earlier, when you sort of have a self-created world for your toys, I could use Metalhead. Metalhead was he could be a hero or a villain. If I was playing and wanted a story where a turtle became a robot or, something like that, Metalhead was the answer to everything.
I hope it wasn't Superman 3 and becoming a robot like that, because that's horrific.
That is, yeah, sorry.
Also a horrific movie.
Yeah.
Oh.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 again, anybody?
I think those movies have a real kinship. Anyway, but yeah, I'll tell you what's really sad, folks, is this Metalhead features probably like 3 or 4 more paint passes than the new Metalhead
than
does.
any or any mass market action figure gets today.
So you tell me, action figures are sort of getting worse in some ways.
And that probably cost all of $3.99 at Kmart.
I know it did.
Back in the early 90s.
At the most $4.99. Yeah. That would have been a scandal, so.
One of my other earliest, again, I had including Metalhead, I had lots of figures. I guess just to run through some of the ones that I really loved. Metalhead, I really loved. Muckman. Muckman, I really loved because when I was a kid, and it's funny thinking back now, I liked the Toxic Crusaders cartoon. And I always wanted Toxic Crusaders stuff, but I could never get any of it. And it wasn't as if my parents were aware enough, even aware of the Toxic Avenger movies to like not want me to play with it. It was just untested quantities didn't like come into the I could get Ninja Turtles and Batman because those were things that they were really well aware of. So they didn't I think they considered it a waste of money to get something they didn't know all about. So I always wanted Toxic Crusader stuff, but I could never get any. So I had Muckman and my so Muckman was my stand-in for the Toxic Avenger when I was a kid, which makes sense because he's almost identical. But I love Muckman. I love Mutagen Man. Ace Duck was a big favorite of mine, and again, these were all ones that my older brother and sister had. The Surfing Michelangelo was a big favorite. Well, another one of the figures that I got specifically for myself, and this is one it wasn't an event or anything. It wasn't like a birthday or a Christmas purchase. It was just one night I was at the old Hazard Walmart with my dad. It was Hazard forever, up until about 10 years ago, I guess, had an old style non-Supercenter Walmart. Remember getting lots of cool toys there. And just one of those, I just remember it, and it's not that it's a significant event or anything, but I was there with Dad, and he was like, hey, you want an action figure? And I was like, yeah, I want to get a Ninja Turtle. So I got Head Pop and Donatello, because the head ducking stuff in the first movie, when Michelangelo ducks his head down, I couldn't get enough of. That's the kind of joke that a kid repeats over and over again, or pretends to do. So, and even though it's Michelangelo in the movie, I got the Donatello. So action feature still works really nicely. You push the head down and it pops up. And actually, coincidentally, San Diego Comic-Con 2014 is going on right now, and I just announced a new set of turtles that'll do that. So I'm really looking. I didn't know that when I got this one ready to come over here and shoot this video. So that's a great coincidence. But again, he's missing his belt and stuff. But this is one I would never get rid of. Not that I consider these the best Ninja Turtles figures that were ever made, but just a little special one to me that I really holds a good place in my heart. One of the things I like about him is that his head sculpt is so benign. Most of the turtles have this big grimace, and this Donatello just has this real average grin on his face. You see?
Yeah, I have the Raphael from that line.
Oh, cool.
And he too was one of my absolute favorites. It's a real testament to Playmates that these action features work really, really well. Still,
and, still
and they're tough figures, and the new ones aren't made of anything remotely similar to that.
They're made of pretty good stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff, but it's not that good.
Oh, and when I got that one, around the same time, my older brother, who was still, who's older than me, but he was still buying toys, got the talking Donatello, where you had the strips that would run through the backs of the figures. Yeah.
I have the Donatello.
I still have that one too, but so it's funny. I had a ton of Donatellos for some reason.
Yeah.
Even though he was never my favorite, but go figure.
Just like Brandon, I had certain Turtles figures that there's nothing that's remarkable about them or anything, but I just have really fond memories of them. And one of those for me is this Donatello that was made to be kind of like a Batman parody. And I'm telling you, I absolutely loved this figure when I was a kid. Me and my brother played with this thing, just religiously. And the condition he's in he's practically new, so you can tell we really cared about this figure. He was so awesome because he has the He-Man action feature for one thing, which was a blast. It still works great. He also came with a sidekick that was supposed to be like a Robin parody, but it was like a tadpole guy cast in one translucent plastic color. so crazy over this figure, and it's just a testament to how well designed so many of the parody and the kind of just fun figures that they did were. I'm really hoping, and it looks like they're doing a good job of this with the Nick figures. They're coming up with some very healthy, fun variants for the kids for the Ninja Turtles. Mm-hmm. I think the key is to dress them up in these kind of silly costumes. Yeah. I think it works super well.
I wouldn't be at all surprised. Which they did in the 2003 line. They did the Turtle Titan, who was a superhero, Michelangelo, which actually was in the cartoon series. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if in the new Nick stuff they do like a line of superhero-themed turtles.
Yeah. I mean, they're getting pretty close anyway with like the LARP turtles and stuff that came out. Like the Leonardo in that is pretty much a superhero. Mm-hmm. So
absolutely.
Pretty cool stuff. So this was definitely one of my big favorites. One segment of the Ninja Turtles that was probably my very favorite that they ever did when I was a kid was the Movie Star Turtles. And they were just so aptly named. I remember being very excited just by the naming of them. But the Turtles movies were such a big deal to me as a kid. The first two I had to just watch on home video. That was just the way it was. There's an interesting story behind me watching the first one on home video. My uncle, some of his family had a rental shop that was going out of business, and he had a bunch of VHS tapes that came into his possession, and he picked out a bunch that he thought I would like, and one of them was the original Ninja Turtles movie. This was 1990, like in fall, so it had just come out on home video. And I remember watching it, and I was just thrilled. I was pretty scared of a lot of it, but I was really thrilled. I know that Mom was pretty scared of me watching it because it's terribly violent. Yeah. Mostly, it was the bad language that she didn't like. Raphael's shouting the D word. It wasn't too great or anything, but that was a big memory for me. I got Turtles 2 as soon as it came out on video. But then I have a really special memory of going to see Turtles 3 in the theater. That night, I think my mom or my aunt was having like one of those Mary Kay parties. And so we were looking, to get out of the house. And Dad took me and my brother to go see Turtles 3. And while we were there, this was in Regency. At the time, it was Regency 7 in London, which is, went downhill. And now it's Regency 8. And it's
talk about under the hill as
really,
well.
really garbagey theater. A lot of great memories there, but they let it go to pot.
And actually, like 15 years later, that's also where we saw TMNT when it first came out. Yeah.
Funny how that worked. Yeah. But while we were in there, though, they had a guy dressed up in this pretty nice Ninja Turtles costume. Awesome. And everybody put their names in this raffle, and you could win a Ninja Turtles figure while you were there. So I thought that was cool. No, that's not how I got either one of these. But no, we just got these because they were so cool. One of those rare times that we actually got a full set of Ninja Turtles in the same style.
I never had a single full set of Turtles. Like I was saying about Michelangelo, my groupings of Turtles were mishmashes of various styles, and infrequently were they of even remotely close style.
But these are excellent figures. I have the new versions of these, the 6-inch Movie Star Turtles coming around. They should be here by next week, and we'll be sure to review those for you guys. And as a lot of people say, these are more detailed than those are. Of course, those are, these aren't exactly accurate to the film. These are more detailed than the movie was.
These are like a fantasy version of, I think this is what a lot of people want to remember them being like in the movie. Closer to Secret of the Ooze than the first movie, certainly, but not really. They're a little too extreme.
But one thing that's great about these, and what really amazes me, is they're made of, like rubber. It's stretchy rubber to kind of better, give it the feel like the movie suits. These have not disintegrated.
No.
These are over 20 years old now, these action figures. And they're not, deteriorating at all. So, that's pretty great.
Yeah,
There's some scuffs on the paint, but only because the bandoliers and stuff have been around them and took the paint off with them. So if you store these, be very careful. I would store them without the belts on. I'd keep the belts separate.
I never had these as a kid. I remember them being around. That's a regret of mine, I suppose. Never did go out of my way to get them. It's funny. I don't know if I was just not aware or what it was, but it was kind of always, if it seemed like something that I had, these were just like, more versions of the Turtles. There was nothing, they weren't in costumes or didn't have outrageous accessories. They didn't, grab me. is something that we needed to have. So I did have Razar and Super Shredder though when I was little. So that was
I had Toka and Super Shredder, but I never got Razar. I still don't own a Razar. So I
did get a Toka later when they reissued them all when they were at big lots, like in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I want to have all of them. I do have a Donatello now. These are extremely hard to find now, practically impossible. And you don't really see them around. Like these aren't the turtles you find at flea markets. So
and if you do, the belts were kind of easy to come off.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna usually find the holsters and the belts and all that. So good luck, but fair warning. These are pretty tough to come by. So great stuff.
Absolutely.
Ninja Turtles, huge part of our childhoods.
One of the big things that I collect that actually we don't discuss in our videos really frequently is Transformers. I've been buying Transformers consistently for close to 20 years now, and we've just recently done a couple videos, but up until now it's something we don't really talk about that much. But Transformers, again, like I said earlier, and I'll keep talking about this again and again. My older brother loved Transformers when it was brand new from the time it started. So there were lots of G1 Transformers laying around when I was a kid. A little banged up, a couple pieces missing maybe. But some cool toys that I really liked playing with when I was a kid were like Sea Spray. It was one of my favorite toys ever to play with when I was a kid, the G1 mini bot. I loved Sea Spray. I loved Gold Bug was one that he had. I got to play with a lot of MicroMasters, especially like the Army set. I was always really fond of. So Transformers, loved it. Was really pretty familiar with Transformers at a young age because fortuitously my dad had gotten the old VHS of More Than Meets the Eye, the original 3-part from the Sunbow cartoon. So I watched that pretty consistently. Generation 2. I remember when Generation 2 started, and it was kind of odd because I didn't know how to take it, because a lot of them were just reissues of old toys. Looking back, to think I could have been getting like G1 Dinobots over again. Like I really wish those are the ones that I picked up, but I never did. But I had all kinds of weird G2 stuff. I had comic books, Marvel comics. I had a lot of coloring books. Some of my favorite coloring books when I was a kid were those G2, which had the toy artwork on them. I really didn't get any G2 toys for the first couple of years, and then '95, it kind of really piqued my interest. And the two first Transformers that I ever got for myself, and these are two of the first toys that I ever literally bought for myself, are some of the '95 G2 GoBots. This is Motormouth and Megatron. First Megatron toy that I ever had, and the only G1 I actually still don't own an original G1 Megatron, and only just a few years ago Jared got me the Action Master Megatron. So this was my one and only G1 G2 Megatron toy for a very long time. But I distinctly remember I had some allowance money or money that I had gotten for good grades or something like that, or it may have been birthday money. And there was a toy store chain at the time when I was about 7. Like I said before, I used to live in Perry County. That's where I grew up, Perry County, Kentucky. Moved to Georgia. I lived in Georgia for about 4 years, so from like '95 to '99. Lived in a little place called Dalton, Georgia. Not so little, but we didn't live in town. We lived just a little bit away. But there was a toy chain there. Toy Liquidators, and some of you may remember it. Toy Liquidators.
I remember.
In retrospect, I now realize was a subsidiary of KB Toys. It was a way for them to liquidate obviously Toy Liquidators, a way for them to liquidate old stock that they couldn't sell at their main KB Toy stores, which there was a KB Toy store in the Dalton Mall. So I went there, had, like I said, just gotten some money, and I don't remember, it's obviously been 19 years. And for whatever reason, these were like the big stick price at KB and Toy Liquidators was 3 for $10. Always a giant bin of toys, 3 for $10, and it was stuff. Sometimes it was fairly new stuff. Sometimes it was really old stuff. But there was always something interesting in there.
I remember seeing a lot of RoboCop series.
Yeah, that's where I got a ton of those. And I went in that one day to Toy Liquidators, and they had a bunch of these GoBots on an end cap. They had a bunch of these, and they had the big. They had Laser Prime actually, which is a toy I've never gotten. Jared has one now though, and I had $7 or $8, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna get 2 of these guys." And for whatever reason, I don't know why I got Motormouth instead of Optimus Prime, because there was an Optimus Prime. He was a red pickup truck, but I got Megatron and I got Motormouth, and these I just. One of the appeals of the GoBots was if you also like Hot Wheels, and I liked Hot Wheels quite a bit as a kid, even though I was never really into cars. I was more into the fantasy Hot Wheels. But these were so much like Hot Wheels, so you could play with them like a robot, and not just play with them as a car, but like a Hot Wheels car. So they were, you could take them all over the place. So couldn't get enough of these guys. Really wore them out, and in fact, like the spokes on these are a little bit warped and stuff. But I probably have 1,000 Transformers. Like that's not an exaggeration. I mean, you see, I'll take a picture of the shelf and put it on here for everybody. And these are 2 that I keep like under lock and key. Like these are 2 that I'm definitely not getting rid of. So really fond memories of these guys. And like I said, I really think these were probably the first 2 toys that I took my own money and purchased for myself. This is one of the major steps for me as a toy collector, and not just a kid who played with toys.
Speaking of toy collecting, one of the very, very biggest steps for me as a toy collector was when I started realizing that Toy Biz was, the same company that had given me all this, enjoyment when I was a kid, was really, going to up the game for the very first time in the mass market and make a mass market, figures more collector friendly. They started experimenting with articulation with their later Spider-Man lines, and with Spider-Man Classics, they went full blown with articulation and detail, and it was amazing. But one of my very fondest memories ever is when Marvel Legends, which had a lot of fanfare and hype behind it when it started. And it is simply just a shadow of what it once was these days.
The new Marvel Legends, perfectly acceptable. Yeah. They don't hold a candle. And it's funny to think how old these figures really are now. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Here we have Captain America from Marvel Legends Wave 1. He's still in pretty good shape. Captain America does have a little bit of the ragdoll thing going on. His joints don't hold that well. I'd like to tighten them some way, but I'd rather not, take a risk on hurting the figure or anything. But just this figure was, to me, as soon as I got it, I realized that I had kind of changed from being a kid that played with toys, like Brandon said, to being an adult that really, wanted to continue to collect action figures, throughout my adulthood. Just so many interesting joints and great poses, incredible sculpting. It had that same feel in my hands that a Masters figure would have, and I wouldn't realize it at the time, but this to me is still the best Captain America figure.
Now there's another KB Toys memory for me. I remember distinctly at the KB Toys in Richmond at the Richmond Mall, which is a ghost town now. Getting that whole first wave in one swoop, finding all 4 of them there and buying them at one time. That Captain America is still #1 to me, and it's still I have it on the stand still on my wall in my living room to this day. It's been there for years now.
Yeah, if you're looking for a fine Captain America action figure, then look no further than Marvel Legends Series 1 Captain America. It's one of my very fondest toy memories getting this thing. So great stuff.
One of the other big transitionary moments for myself and for a lot of people was Star Wars Power of the Force 2. Maybe, definitely not the great, especially the early figures, not the greatest toy line ever by any stretch of the imagination. Ape-faced Princess Leia, anybody? You all remember. But still, one of the most significant toy lines ever, and absolutely kick-started the modern idea of collecting, not necessarily collecting, but hoarding toys and scalping toys and flipping them. So I remember, the world being abuzz. This is in the pre-internet days, so I'm reading about them in like magazines and stuff like Star Wars Insider or Star Wars Galaxy magazine at the time.
I would read about them in Action Figure Collector,
Yeah.
which was a price guide magazine that would come out.
Always used to check those out. Those are the kind of magazines you could never buy or talk somebody into buying for you, but you looked at them anytime
I
you
could
got
talk,
to go to
I
the
could talk
bookstore.
Mom into buying them.
Oh, yeah? Awesome. I see, I never could.
Because they had some Barbie stuff in there, too.
Oh, okay. That
At the
makes
time,
sense.
Mom collected Barbies.
Cool. But like I said before, had lots of vintage Star Wars figures laying around when I was a kid because of my older brother, so it's something I played with pretty consistently. So they didn't. So the Power of the Force 2 figures didn't have like a ton of appeal to me initially, because I had I had all the standard characters laying around already. It wasn't unusual for me not to have Star Wars figures around, but. The first two Power of the Force 2 figures I got was probably in late 95. And I had gotten this one, I remember distinctly, unlike Transformers. I can tell you the specifics, that I had gotten $10 for my birthday from my grandmother. And at the time, like I said, we were living in Georgia, so I was coming back from Kentucky to Georgia. And we stopped in Tennessee, stopped at Toys R Us. Like I said, we were living in Georgia at the time, so I was coming back from visiting my grandmother in Kentucky. Back to Georgia, where we were at the time, and we stopped in Tennessee. It must have been the Chattanooga, Tennessee Toys R Us, and I had this $10 of birthday money, and it was one of those like off-season birthday money deals where, because we didn't go visit Kentucky all the time, it was like a month before my birthday, so it was a really like special event. So I go, and for whatever reason, the item that absolutely speaks to me that I have to buy is I see they got the Power of the Force to R2-D2 and C-3PO, and so I got those. Absolutely love those figures, and I've still got them. But those are the two that I had for a while. I didn't get any more for quite a while after that, until I came home one day at random, much like my Swamp Thing story. I come home from school one day, probably in the 3rd grade or whatever it was, or probably 2nd, and Mom hands me this little white box. Came in the mail, with my name on it. I open it up, and inside, miraculously, is Han Solo in Stormtrooper disguise. And no Star Wars figure I've ever owned captured my imagination quite like this guy. He was a Kellogg's mail away, I guess. I know for sure that mine was ordered from Fruit Loops boxes.
That was mine too. Mine was ordered from Fruit Loops boxes, and it was actually the first real Powers of the Force figure I ever had. I went back later. And the Family Dollar stores at the time were getting in shipments. There's my cat, Kiki. Family Dollar stores at the time were getting in shipments of the first wave of Powers of the Force. So I went back.
That's where I remember getting a lot of mine.
I bought them that way. I remember they were a little overpriced. I remember kind of.
Yeah, they were like $6.99.
Yeah, and it was more than what you would pay. I remember. I think they were $8.
Yeah.
And but still, it was worth it for some of them I was looking for. I remember. You see. My sister and my brother-in-law, they took me to see all 3 special edition Star Wars movies, and after each one, I would go out. I think starting after The Empire Strikes Back, I would go out and I would pick out some toys from Walmart because it was in full swing at the time, and there was nothing quite like Powers of the Force 2. I still have a huge collection of them. And
I've got almost
really
every Power of the Force 2 figure now, I guess. And not that I certainly didn't get nearly all of them, but I've just picked them up here and there, because now they're cheap, man.
Yeah.
There's less than half a dozen of those figures that are worth anything today, and even then, it's not very much. But this was really the one that set me like on fire to get as many Powers of the Force figures as I possibly could. And again, like Transformers, Star Wars is something that I collect a lot of. Not right at this moment, but at times I've collected more than anything. And this is really like one of the big defining moments in that collection for me. So very fond of this figure. Again, this is the very one. This is the same one that I got. And one of the good things about this, and I think Jared knows what I'm talking about. If you need an extra Stormtrooper, it just doubles right over. Yep. So that's how this figure got a lot of use as just a Stormtrooper.
That's how I use it most of the time. Yeah. Every now and then there comes a special item in your collection that defines for me what my whole hobby is about. There's that one item in your collection you wouldn't trade it for anything. And for me, that item has to be the Wayne Manor compound, the Batcave playset from the Dark Knight collection.
I'm getting so jealous. I wanted one so bad.
That's right.
So bad. I remember just lusting after that and the old Kenner catalog that you get with the toys, and just never could get
I'll
one.
never forget it. I don't think I actually went on the trip, but Mom came back, and it was near me and my brother's birthday, and she had with her, there was the Bat Missile Batmobile, and the Wayne Manor compound, and also that 12-inch or 13-inch Michael Keaton Batman doll, which I also still have back there. But it was, that was huge for us. That was probably the very best stuff I've ever gotten for my birthday.
That is a memorable birthday right there.
It was huge. They probably spent, it probably totaled out at that time to be like $200 for all that stuff.
Gotta be.
And nowadays that would be more like $300 or $400.
Yeah.
But here it is, the Batcave compound playset. Some interesting history with this thing. We had discovered a few years ago that this was actually going to be released for Batman 1 for the original Dark Knight collection in '91. However, I guess they couldn't exactly get the tooling budget to do it, to mass produce them at that time. So they ended up waiting until Batman Returns came out and slightly recolored the front. And this is what we ended up getting. So because of that, on the back, we have this whole setup. And when I was a kid, this is supposed to be the Penguin's lair back here. When I was a kid, I would always put Joker on the end and use the trap door for him to fall off. Why? Because I thought this is just like Axis Chemicals.
Yeah,
it even has a basin that comes off down here for him, to fall into. And of course, it was supposed to be Axis Chemicals. That's why there's a trap door and everything so that he could fall into the vat. It just got repurposed, and they couldn't release it till Batman Returns time.
Speaking of repurposing, I don't know if there's another playset that's... There's definitely not.
There's definitely not, no.
There's never been another playset that was ever reused as much as this. Got reissued for Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, animated series, New Adventures of Batman. For Mattel reissued it at least once.
I think Mattel had 2 different versions.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that means I believe this got reissued a total of 5 or 6 times. Mm-hmm. And that is insane. As a matter of fact, I would hate to say it, but I'm sure it's probably true, that the mold, the tools for this are probably destroyed.
I guarantee it. And I would almost guarantee you that if we took this one, this is the Batman Returns model, if we could get that last Mattel version and we could compare them 1-to-1,
yes,
I bet you there's a visible difference in the in the pieces that that came out of the
tool wore out. Now don't be confused for you people that don't know. When we're talking about a tool, we're not talking about a tool you work on.
Yeah, not a hammer.
We're talking about the metal pieces they use in the factory that they inject the plastic into. And they wear out with repeated use when things get reissued. Yeah. And after a while, things will start to get fuzzy and soft to the point where pieces don't fit together. So you can't use the tools anymore. They're too wore out. Yeah.
But I personally have 2 different versions of this. I have, again, not that I had when I was a kid, but I've just picked up with the years. I have the Batman Forever version and the animated series version, and both very cool. But this is still the the one. This is the version to have.
What's amazing about this playset is there's so many different areas in it, and this is, to me, people talk about having Castle Grayskull when they're a kid. Well, to me, this is my Castle Grayskull because that wasn't a thing for me as a kid, but this sure was.
Yeah.
So here we go. We open it up, and you have a plain kind of interior. Just regular Wayne Manor here, and over here they have some very clever stickers, and unfortunately a lot of my holders over here that keep this part in are being stressed to the point where they won't stay in, but it's still in okay shape. What's great is there's a clock that actually opens up over here the Batman can walk through, so it's pretty fortuitous that they kept that for Batman Returns with the clock and everything. It's all stickers there. And on the other side, if we unfold it the other way, as you can see, it's a full Batcave display. And here's a random red piece from something. Don't know what that's from. I'll put that down here to sort out later. But anyway, though, as you can see, there's lots going on here. This, to me, was just everything as a kid. You had the storage area for his costume here. And I would take the Bruce Wayne figure, like Brandon was showing earlier, and I'd take the costume pieces and stack them in there, just like in the movie, how you had the shelves, that were just full of repeat stuff, like a cartoon character. Yeah. You had the same outfit again and again. The great thing, though, was the action features and all that. But we're going to show you guys a closer look of this toy.